Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 267 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Elizabeth, Henry's mom. Now, I really felt like I bonded with Elizabeth on many levels. First of all, Henry reminded me so much of Andy. But secondly, she lost Henry just as he was doing what Peter just started out doing as well. So I really admired her, and I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot about not letting others forge your grief path and being willing to just forge your own and not worrying about what other people may think about the choices that you're making. So I just know that you are going to learn so much from her, no matter what type of grief loss journey you are going through. I also want to take another opportunity here to promote social media. So I need you all to follow me, Always Andy's Mom, on Instagram, or to like the Facebook page, and know that different clips come out all the time. And I am super excited because I have a new video editing team that's joining the Always Andy's Mom family. And you're actually going to get to meet them very soon because they are also bereaved parents. So please follow me on social media, because that is how we really can spread this message of hope and healing and spread the Always Andy's Mom podcast to other people who might not have heard of it. So that is an easy way to do that, to just repost things and like things. That will help us out a lot. Also, making sure that you go to your favorite podcast player and leave hopefully a 5-star review, because again, we just want to be able to help spread the message of hope and healing to as many bereaved parents as we possibly can. And thank you all for listening. Right now, just sit back and enjoy listening to Elizabeth, Henry's mom. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited and looking forward to hearing all about Henry. What can you tell us? Let's just start out by just telling us all about your Henry.
So Henry never fit inside a box. He was always a kid who did his own thing from the time he was little. First of all, he never had an indoor voice. You know how teachers say, like, use your indoor voice. No. Henry was so loud all the time. He just was always a few decibels above where most kids were. He always looked kind of disheveled. And he kind of always just knew where he was going from the time he was little. So, he was a super curious little kid. Was always picking things up, rocks and twigs, and he put them in his pockets, and it was really hard to get him to go on a hike because he kept stopping to pick things up to put them in his pockets. And one of his babysitters said she was always so curious when she did the laundry, like what would come out of his pockets. So so he never stopped. Like, even as a teenager, he was still collecting rocks and shells at the beach. Even though he could tell you the history of the Crimean War, but he still wanted to pick the rocks up. So that was a really endearing trait.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's like super sweet, right?
So sweet.
What a sweet little thing.
He was like a little boy at heart, no matter what,
And he was your oldest, right?
He was my oldest son. I have 2 sons, Henry and his younger brother. Yeah, he was my oldest, so he was the first one to call me mama,
Yeah.
And, just a delicious little kid. Just delicious.
Yeah. And then he became a big brother.
So my boys are only 16 months apart. So it was good in a way, because he never really knew that he could have been an only child. Like, he never knew what he was missing. The boys were actually super close, and they were both like in diapers at the same time. So And, they fought, they wrestled and things like that, but they stayed very close, and they were definitely best friends by the time Henry went away to college.
Well, I love that. I love them when you have kids close together, because they do tend to be, so close. And it is really hard for parents sometimes to have to go through it when they're so close together. But for the kids, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely. It's great.
I always think about when my daughter, I had Andy. And, here's my little Katie. We called her Katie at the time, and she was just over 2. And we were going to be moving soon. And, of course, I still had family pictures out that just were of the 3 of us.
Oh, right.
Right? And literally, Andy's like 5, 6 weeks old. She looked at a family picture, looked at me, and said, "Where Andy?"
Oh.
Because she was like, that picture does not belong here, because Andy needs to be in it. Like, she didn't even want things out that didn't have her brother in it, because in her mind,
right,
her little 2-year-old mind, that's the way life should be, with the 4 of us, not 3. And that's I think the beauty of having kids pretty close together,
That is so sweet. I love that story. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously yours, Henry was so young, 16 months, he couldn't even say that yet about his brother.
He couldn't even say his brother's name yet, basically.
Right. But the fact that he wouldn't have remembered life without him. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it was good because they had the same sensibility and same sense of humor. And so they kind of talk in their own little world. And of course, they could complain about their parents together, which is always a bonding experience, for kids.
Of course.
You want them to have that.
Of course. So did little brother like to play with rocks and explore as much, or no?
No, my younger son, I mean, he wasn't really, he was not obsessed with rocks and shells and things like that, the way Henry was. He had a more balanced outlook. For sure. And so, and then Henry was also, very curious. He loved it when you read to him. You could read like almost anything to him and he would sit still for it. And Henry was really hyper. He had, attention deficit disorder. He took meds. But if you read to him, you could be reading the New York Times. Literally, I would read the paper and he would sit there and listen. So, it's interesting how kids can focus when they want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he just loved the words. He loved the words.
That's funny. It reminds me a little bit of my Andy that way too, right? Because my Andy had ADHD too. You probably have heard that over at the time.
Yeah.
And there are sweet things about that too. I feel like, a lot of kids, I talk to kids all the time when their brains have ADHD. The emotions that they feel are sometimes just bigger.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
They just feel it more. I feel like they love bigger, but they get sad. I mean, all of the emotions are just bigger than they are for other kids.
I think that's absolutely true. I think it's that. And sometimes it could be just so much fun because they come out left field with ideas and things. And, and so we, but like, because Henry, sometimes he couldn't focus. And so that was challenging. Like, sometimes he would forget people's names, right? And so, it's hard to make friends if you can't remember someone's name. So, but as he got older, he started like writing down kids' names.
Yeah.
So, he started trying to like address it. And that was just really nice to see. I was like, okay, he's going to figure this out.
You get your little cheats, right?
Yeah. Your cheats. Yeah.
His little cheats, his way is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Everyone has their cheats, right? Everyone has their cheats.
Yeah. Right. But I love that. You just kind of grow to know yourself and you know what you need.
Absolutely.
I need like stuff in my phone. If it's not like in my phone, it's not real. Like, oh my gosh.
Me too.
Yeah, right. So talk about him and then as he was in high school because, he's growing up.
So so in high school, so Henry went to a high school for quirky kids. It's a great high school in Los Angeles. And this is really where he kind of found his people.
Uh-huh.
They were kids that a lot of them spectrum or they had learning differences, and he really found his people there. Not only that, but he offered friendship to a lot of kids that had trouble making friends. And during COVID, we started a movie night on Saturday nights in our backyard, and he would invite kids to come. This is when like school hadn't come back yet.
Yeah.
Then when school came back, he kept doing it, and so he would insist that anyone who wanted to come from the school could come, even if they were younger. And he started inviting people. And for a lot of these kids, it was like the first time they'd ever been asked over to someone's house. And so he really built friendships with kids that and he offered friendships to kids that really needed it. And they're wonderful kids, they just hadn't quite gotten that experience. And so, the movie nights we had on Saturdays at our house were like some of the best, evenings. And I just loved listening to the kids like argue about the movie downstairs. And my husband and I would like hide upstairs in our room so we didn't bother them. And, they just were like normal kids. They were normal kids arguing about the movie, but you could tell they were so happy to be together.
Uh-huh. That is really funny because that reminds me, again, very much of Andy. So he went to an aviation and engineering school. And let's just say, I mean, that by definition has some kids in it that are a little more awkward, right? And that was Andy too. He didn't ever quite really fit in the regular public school. He just would be his emotionality was so much, and he was super easy to pick on. He was really tiny, a small guy, and he would forgive anybody. Right? I mean, you could be mean to Andy, and you knew the next day he would forgive you and be your best friend. And that makes it easy to pick on somebody like that. Absolutely. If they're never going to hold a grudge. And it would always make me mad. I would always be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. He would come home and like, Jack's really nice. And I'm thinking to myself, Jack is a jerk. Yeah. Come on, buddy. Jack has been a jerk to you for years. But, one day Jack's nice. And, and so that anyway, it makes it easy to get picked on and to not have a lot of real great friendships. And he went off to his new school, and of course he was just in orientation. He died in the middle of his second orientation week. But I remember it was probably the day before he died. He came home and he said, Mom, the kids at my new school think I'm funny. Oh. And it just like broke my mama's heart. But I said, well, honey, you are funny.
You are funny. You are funny.
You are funny.
Yeah, you didn't have the right audience.
You are funny. It's just that nobody had noticed it before.
Yeah, you needed a better audience.
Right? And now he was with kids that were like, just like him and got him and understood him. And he, and that's
really beautiful.
That was so special. I was so excited. I just felt like this is going to be it for him, right? He's just
going to be a great experience for him. And then he didn't get to have it. I'm so sorry.
And then he didn't get to have it. But, back to Henry a little bit. So he got to have it all of high school, right?
Yeah, he had a wonderful high school experience. He got to have that experience. He made friends. And by the time he, was going away to college, he felt really good about himself. He felt he had friendships, as he should have. He had friendships. He got into college, It was a little bit like touch and go there for me for a while in high school. All the parents at the school, we joke, were like, are they going to graduate? Are they going to make it? But of course they all did. They all, got through it and graduated and had somewhere to go if that's what they were planning to do. And then, he spent the summer before he started college, working. He worked in a coffee shop, did a great job. He was getting excited about going away to school. We picked his classes, and then I took him to orientation. I stayed around for a few days just to get him settled.
And was it a ways from home or was it relatively close?
It was in the Pacific Northwest and I live in California. So it was a few, it was like a short plane ride.
So it was a ways.
It was a ways away. It was a plane ride.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He was so excited to be there. He had already gone on like an orientation trip and a hiking trip by the time I got there to help him get to school.
Oh, wow.
And I said goodbye to him on a Friday. He started school on Monday. He had a full day of classes, and then he died Monday night. He died in an accident the first day of college. Literally. First day of college. He died.
Yeah.
In an accident. And it's like you couldn't, worst nightmare even imagine.
No.
It's a kid who was so excited to get to college. He literally didn't even make it through his first day.
Yeah. Just so horrible.
It's so horrible. And, he was with some kids after school, after class, and they said they were going to go to part of campus and put up hammocks. Some of them had hammocks with them. They're going to put them up. They went to an area of campus that other kids had gone to. They'd even gone there the weekend before. They asked like a residential advisor, where should we go? And the residential advisor said, oh, this is a great area. That's the area they went to.
Yeah.
And they had these freestanding pillars. They weren't way down with anything. And I guess, some of the kids were hanging in the hammocks. Henry got into one. And I guess, for whatever reason, a particular pillar and the way the hammock was laid out, however it worked, it tipped over and this enormous pillar fell on him. Enormous pillar fell on him, hit his head, knocked him out. And then he died before any medical care could come. I don't know that it would have mattered.
No, probably not. It's just can be.
It was a fatal blow. And then
I was gonna say you can have different types of bleeds, and some it is just within minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, others you have like hours, but it just kind of depends.
Yeah. I asked the coroner, and that's what she said. She said it was just too severe. So in some ways, I don't know if that's better. And then a couple of other students were injured, but thank goodness, they survived with some injuries. And then that was it. I would literally I'm like, how could it be over? That was like the big,
yeah.
How could it be over? Like, I'm still here. Like, how could it be over? I just couldn't fathom how this could have happened. Like, I'm sure, every grieving parent feels this way, but it's just such a shock.
Especially when it's such a crazy, fluky, unexpected thing like that.
And it was such a lead up to him going to college, the way I'm sure it is for many families. Like, it's such a big deal and it's such a celebration and it's so exciting. And then and then for this to happen is so heartbreaking. And of course, now I'm, college has a different meaning for me. When I hear people sending their kids off to college, it's not a sweet, happy thing anymore.
No.
It's either I feel fear for them or I feel jealous that it's not me, or, but it's not a good feeling. None of those feelings are good feelings.
No. I was telling you, when you emailed me 3 weeks to the day after I dropped off Peter at college. And I've said on the podcast before, as I was going through that the fear that kept coming in the forefront of my mind was, as I'm dropping him off, is just this little voice in my head that says, this is going to be the last time you see him. This is going to be the last time that you see him. Just over and over and over in my head, because I have talked to families who don't see their kids again. And I talked with Gwen about it right before. I said, I can't stop hearing this voice in my head saying, this is it. You're going to drop him off and this is going to be it. You're not going to see him again. And it's almost like I was trying to prep myself somehow.
Right.
Like if I think it enough that maybe it wouldn't hurt it as much if it really happened. The day before I'm in the office and I was telling you I had several different things happen that day that were reminding me of the accident where I lost Andy. And of course, I had this voice telling me, like, this is going to be it. You're going to say goodbye tomorrow. And my office manager said, well, and she was very sweet. She said, oh, Marcy, that's not true though, right? And I said, but I don't know.
Right.
That's the problem.
That's right. I
don't know. Is it rational? Is it likely? No, I know it's unlikely, and I know in some ways it's an irrational fear, but I also know that it can happen.
Absolutely.
And then what happened? Then you emailed me, and I felt like saying, "See, this can happen. This is not irrational."
So, one of the things that I've been doing since this is, it turns out actually, a lot of students have accidents in the first month or semester of college, and actually. Mm-hmm. A fair number of students do die in accidents when they arrive at college. And, it's not necessarily the university's fault, but, there are safety precautions and other measures universities and colleges could be taking that they are not taking. Mm-hmm. And so I joined a group called this College Safety Coalition, and they're trying to pass a bill called the Corey Act that would mandate that colleges report. All we're asking is for them to report the number of fatal accidents and serious injuries that happen on campus, because I don't think people realize that nobody actually reports how many deaths happen on school campus. If you're sending your child to college, you will never know. You will know how many crimes happen, and you will know how many fires happen, how many injuries from fires and crime. That leaves out a huge number of things, including concussions from sports, alcohol poisoning from hazing, head injuries from things falling on your child, or unstable structures. Also, lab accidents, which I know are coming up in the news lately. If your child is, pre-med and working in a lab, well, there's all sorts of accidents there. And the universities they're not under any obligation to report these. And guess what? They don't, because it's bad for business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as parents, we're just trying to raise awareness of this, because if you knew, we feel like if people knew how many accidents were happening on college campuses, it would motivate the colleges to do more. And somehow, miraculously, the numbers would drop, right? There'd be more alcohol awareness, hazing, anti-hazing.
Right.
All awareness.
Right. If they had to publish those numbers, they would. It would change.
They would. Head injuries, and it can be as simple as somebody has opposed to their first party ever. They fall down the stairs. Some kids put them on the couch and figure, they'll sleep it off. By the time they realize, no, you needed to take them to the emergency room because it was a head trauma, before they realize it's too late that person has died. If there was more education. So this is one of the things I'm hoping to raise awareness about.
It's funny because I think all the way back to my mom. My mom, she started college, first week of school. She's in a bunk for the first time in her whole life. She's never been in a bunk, right? And the alarm goes off, and it scares her half to death, and she jumps up, falls off the bed, hits her chin very hard, and breaks out 9 teeth. That's a major accident. Because they put a rug there and it slipped, and obviously this is back many years ago now, right? This happened a long time ago. But those types of things happen, and it was because she's in a brand new spot, not used to things like that, not used to things that are going on, and the flooring was not safe.
Not safe,
right? It wasn't
not safe at all.
No, it wasn't safe. I mean, it was her own fault. I'm sure she put a little rug there that she slipped, but it could have been hitting her head and not surviving. Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I forgot to mention that actually bunk bed accidents are actually a leading cause of injury and death in general, but in college students, because I have a friend, Mary Ellen Jacobs, who has a nonprofit called Rail Against the Danger. And actually her son suffered a traumatic brain injury because he fell off his bunk bed in college.
Mm-hmm.
And actually if your mom had a safety rail on her bed, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, sure. No way it would happen. It was only because she was so frightened,
right?
And this alarm going off,
right,
and scaring her that she fell.
Terrible.
It never would have happened had there been a safety rail. Yeah. I mean, it's terrible.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, fortunately, it was just the teeth. Now she had to have a partial in her mouth for forever, and I never saw what my mom's natural teeth looked like, because she broke out so many teeth. And it was a terrible way to start out college, for sure.
Absolutely terrible.
But I am glad I told that story, because it's one of those things that
that's a great example,
right? Because it is so common, because everybody bunks their beds.
That's right.
Because the dorm rooms are so tiny. And if you don't have the side up, you just need to make sure that they have that.
And actually, that reminds me, if for any people who are sending their child to college, there's something called, they don't necessarily have bunk beds, but they have what's called a loft bed, where you lift the bed up above the desk. And always make sure that your child asks for a safety rail, because they are not mandated in most colleges, but if you ask, they will put one in. And when you see these beds 7 or 8 feet off the ground, there's effectively a concrete floor. Maybe there's a little carpet over it, but it's concrete. If you could just do that one thing, it would help your child's safety immensely.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we did bring that up. I know that, and it wasn't even part of the plan, but it ended up coming up.
No, thank you. Thank you for that.
So I want you to talk about, though, your grief journey a little bit. I mean, first of all, I think we can talk about even how you found out about this, because obviously that would have been just probably a phone call that you received then, right?
Yeah. So initially I found this group surfing the web, because after Henry died, all I did was look to see, is this how did this happen? Has this happened before? Have other people had children die? And so I found this group. But about a year after Henry died, I wrote an article that appeared in Huffington Post, and the group read it, and that's how they reached out to me and said, we'd love to have you help our group.
Mm-hmm.
So by writing that article, I was able to connect. And that has been a great thing for me to be able to help with that.
So you've connected with other parents who've gone through similar?
Yeah. So through this group, I'd met, 5 or 6 other parents who've lost their children in accidents on college campuses. And then, of course, I started, after Henry died, I joined like a grief loss writing group.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined a couple of support groups. And basically, like, a huge part of my life now is hanging out with grieving parents.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're the most fun. Like, because, but, like, these are the people I really enjoy hanging out with now.
I know.
Do you feel that way too, Marcy?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Guess where I was this last weekend? I was at a bereaved mom's weekend. It was fantastic.
Yeah, right?
It was fantastic. Yeah.
It's where you want to be.
They're like my people. I feel like,
Exactly.
okay, now I'm with my people.
These are my people now. So my some of my new, close, wonderful people I've met through support groups or grief writing, and we just have so much to talk about all the time,
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're right. We do. And I love that you call them fun, because that's awesome.
That's so we're so right. Because they really get to the heart of, like, you don't have a superficial conversation with someone like that, right?
No.
You don't talk about the
No.
weather or how cute their blouse is. Like, you talk about real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally different than what you do. And those are relationships where you just have those superficial conversations just feel so stupid now. Right?
So stupid. Like, you're wasting your time.
Right. And you just don't even, like, they don't deserve my time. They don't deserve even to know this about me,
Absolutely. I mean, I think I can see why, if somebody is a grieving parent, they might not want to make new friends with people that have a loss of, like, they have great friends, they love their friends, but let's not make a huge effort to make new friends that have a lost a child when there's so many fabulous grieving parents out there that you can meet.
Right, because they always it's always awkward. The introduction and stuff is always awkward.
And I feel bad that they feel bad. I feel bad.
I know. I know.
Awkward.
The first thing they do when you're a mom and you're a woman, they're like, how many kids do you have? And then you don't know how to answer. Because if you answer how you need to answer, then they all feel bad and they say they're sorry.
Right.
And that's just this weird awkwardness afterwards, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's always like, well, how much do I say? How much is this person going to be in my life, right?
Right.
Because if I don't say it now and we go on to have more of a friendship, then it's going to be weird because I've never brought it up.
Why didn't you tell me? We've known each other 3 months. You never told me.
Right. Exactly. So, but if it's just some isolated cashier at a grocery store that you're never going to say again, like, I'm not going into this with you.
And you don't need to ruin that lady's day. Like,
right.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's sort of what you'll do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think back to the very beginning, and I'm coming in and I'm with my friend, and Andy's been dead less than a week, and Michigan Blood calls for their blood drive and says, how are you doing today? And I said, terrible. And she said, oh, why's that? And I said, my son is dead, and hung up the phone. Kind of ruined her day, I'm sure. But,
Gosh.
If somebody says terrible, don't ask them why. Just say, I'm really sorry. I'll call back another time.
That's right. That's a good point. Customer service
but
point.
Still, a little bit much. And I hung up the phone, and my friend Michelle looks at me and was like, okay, that was maybe more than the Michigan blood lady needed today. Yeah, maybe didn't need to go there.
Yeah.
But yet,
it takes a while to figure out how to answer those questions. And I think the answer is any way that feels right to you is the right way to answer them, right?
Yes, absolutely, right. So talk about that article, because it's a beautiful article, and it's quite in depth, really. And I just want you to share with people what that all was about.
So, because my sons are only 16 months apart, my younger son applied to college the year after Henry applied and was planning to go to college. And we tried to, convince him and hoped he would take a gap year and not. But basically, no, he wanted to go to college. So I was in this position of having to send my younger son to college exactly a year after my older son had died at college. And what my husband and I decided to do is we decided to move with him. So we moved to Washington, D.C. for the year to be near my younger son in college. We did live with him. He lived in the dorms, but there was no way we could send him 2,000 miles away and just wait and hope and pray there was no phone call. But we wanted to support him because he deserved to have a college experience too. He obviously was grieving his brother, but he felt that.
That's what I was just going to say. But he was grieving too. And having you close by was helpful to him too. So it wasn't just it's just for you and your husband. It was for all of you.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, so I don't think my younger son, I'm not sure that he never said that. And I'm not sure if he admitted that or not. I like to think it helped him just knowing that we were there. I like to think that it helped him. And I think it did. But the truth is, I was just too terrified. We had to go. Yeah. And my husband felt the same way. So part of the reason I wrote the article is because it's so weird when you tell someone you're moving to be near your son in college. People freak out. Even if your other child died, they still freak out. They think you must be a helicopter parent, and they think you're going to ruin everything. And people say all sorts of things. And I was going to do it anyway, but it seemed like something worth explaining in writing.
Well, I think to when, my daughter went off to college, and it was 2 years afterwards, but still, it was hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was hard to have her out of the nest, right? And so I would text her fairly often, wanting a text back.
Right.
And when I didn't get a text back, I would immediately jump to, oh my gosh, she's dead.
Right.
That's just where my head would go.
Yeah.
I would go to the worst. I mean, not right away, but an hour goes by.
Yes.
2 hours go by. 3 hours go by.
Terrified.
Yes, terrified. That at one time, my husband was actually driving to Lansing, which was halfway there. She had not responded to texts. He drove the rest of the way.
Did he really?
Yes.
To check on her.
To check. Because she wasn't responding, and she was really suffering from a lot of issues related to the death of her brother and other mental health things too. She had to move to college in COVID. It was a disaster.
Horrible, yeah.
But and then I had her therapist had a meeting with us and said, I can't do that. I can't be texting her and expecting responses back. And I said to her, first of all, she was young. She was I don't know, 24, this counselor, this therapist.
Oh, no.
Said, have you ever had a child die? And she, of course, said no, because she didn't even have kids yet. And I said, well, after you do, you can tell me that. But until then, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And she's like, I think this is something you need to explore with your own therapist. Of course I'm exploring it with my own therapist. Are you crazy? But my own therapist sees bereaved moms all the time, and she tells me this is pretty normal. And for me to expect a thumbs up emoji from my daughter, just letting me know that she's alive, is not too much to expect.
She could just do it. It'll take 2 seconds.
I don't need more than a word. I really don't. I don't need a whole huge thing. I just need something to make me step back and take a breath and, not think that. So... And was a 2 hour drive, right?
Right,
this
and
is
even
a 2 hour drive.
This
is not 2,000 miles,
right?
Like you were anticipating. That's what it was going to be for you. So it feels better.
Yeah.
Even though you really still don't have control, right? You still don't have control.
I still had you're absolutely right. I still had no control over my son's really everyday,
Of course not.
Yeah.
But you have this kind of feeling that you do a little bit, right?
Felt better to be near him. It felt better to be physically close to him. And if he needed us, if something happened, we could get there. And that made a huge difference. It may not have been logical, but it made a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. I know. Peter now just, of course, went off to school, right? I just told you. He's in Indianapolis at Purdue. They have a campus there now. But he was looking also at at Michigan Tech, which is, you'd think I'm in Michigan, so Michigan Tech would be closer, but no, Michigan Tech is way in the Upper Peninsula on a little outcropping that goes into Lake Superior. It's like 7 hour drive from here.
Oh, wow.
And there's no airport close, nothing. And as he was contemplating that, I kept thinking there is no way to get to him quickly. Right?
Yeah.
Indianapolis is a 4-hour drive, so it's 4 hours is not terrible. But I also have an airport right here.
Right.
And there's an airport in Indianapolis. Like I can get there quickly.
If you needed to. Absolutely. That makes a huge difference.
If I need to, because those are the things you need to know. I mean, he was looking at a school in Florida, and I actually was like, I can get to him quicker at that school in Florida than I can at the one up in the UP.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
The driving, the whatever. I know it's so interesting.
That's what you think. That's the way you're thinking now. Like, this is how your mind
is right. That's my reality now.
Yeah. I totally get it.
That is how every moment was when we were doing that. Now, fortunately for me, Peter also said, I really don't think I can go up to Michigan Tech because it's too far from home. And he didn't even finish his application to that school in Florida because he said it's too far.
Okay.
So he felt that too, like he just can't be too far.
Interesting. So that's good. He knew that about himself.
He knew that about himself. And when we sent him to school, he has a car on campus. We pay for him to have a car on campus because it gives him more of a feeling that he can be back in 4 hours. He can be here.
That's
if
great.
He needs to. Because when you've gone through this trauma,
That's right.
It changes you. It changes every bit of you.
Yeah. And I mean, I know of other families, where the kids, they're always checking on each other. They just start checking on each other all the time after there's a tragedy. It impacts everyone. It's not just the parents.
Yeah. I mean, my father-in-law, when I'm sending him off to school, he said, well, I mean, you're certainly not, I don't know why he can't go up to Michigan State. Or Michigan Tech.
Right.
You're certainly not going to see him until Thanksgiving, right? It wouldn't be good for him to come home before Thanksgiving, right?
Oh,
like, you know what? I think if he wants to come home, he can come home.
Yeah.
That's
That's right.
And I said he said, well, when I sent my kids, we were only an hour away, but I didn't see them till Thanksgiving. Well, you didn't also have one die, did you? I mean,
That's right.
It's just so different for us.
I feel like, I'm definitely a much more empathetic person now than I was before Henry Seth, because I realize that you have no idea what is happening to people under the surface. I mean, honestly, that's always been the case. And
But you didn't know.
Too much of a jerk to realize. Like,
you didn't know it.
But now I think to myself, you know what? I have no idea what this person's morning was like, what their family looks like. And so you just have to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And you have to do what's best for you and your family
at
that moment, no matter what, if they're looking at you weird. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. You can't worry about what people think. You just care.
I sent Peter away to college. It got to be Labor Day weekend. It's 2 weeks later. And he said that he wanted to come home. He'd only been there 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
He wanted to come home. He wanted to go up to the lake and hang out. And I had asked if he wanted to bring friends. He said, I don't think so. I think I just wanted to kind of chill and relax. Now, most of the time he had to do homework, poor kid. But he felt like he wanted to be back. And he was. And, in this last Sunday, I went down and I went to a basketball game with him. So, I've not gone more than 3 weeks without seeing him. And I'm sure my father-in-law probably thinks that's awful. Right? Because I'm having it too close. And I'm not letting him be off on his own. But, I think taking his mom to a basketball game and going to dinner, not a huge deal, right? I was at the retreat, and it was a little bit out of the way to go visit Peter. So
it's wonderful.
And he loved it.
You had a wonderful time with him. It's great. Yeah. He knows you love him.
And if other people think it's weird, they just do.
Yeah, you just can't worry about it. And it's true. And nobody's watching your shoes. And it just changes your whole perspective on everything. Just everything.
Yeah.
Completely.
So talk about what that year was like then for you.
So, I mean, it was a quiet year. It was a little bit of a lonely year because my husband and I we had a little bit of family and maybe a couple of friends in Washington, D.C., but we're just the two of us, with our dog and, for a lot of the time. So, we explored the city and it wasn't a super exciting year, but that's okay. Because the point of it wasn't to have a fabulous time in Washington, D.C. We did stop, but, mostly we were just there because we knew we needed to do it.
Right. And you didn't want to live in this kind of terrified feeling all the time.
There's one story that is funny now that it's over, but they have text alerts they sent to parents with their safety issues. And so one afternoon we got a text alert. There was a live shooter on campus. Okay.
Oh no.
They send this text alert out. It turned out it was not a big deal. This man had a gun. He was on a bus. He was just carrying the gun. They found him. It was fine. So everyone's going to be fine. We didn't know that. And the first thing my husband says is, should I go there? I said, what are you going to do? Are you going to go there, find the man with the gun and wrestle him to the ground? No, you shouldn't go there. But we started, but this is how,
you go, right?
Yeah. And it turned out, of course, our son was texting, don't be crazy. Yeah, I'm in the dorms. It's fine. Chill out.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry that brings it to me because so I am part of the Michigan State University faculty because we're faculty for the medical school. Okay.
Wonderful.
So,
wow.
But that's in Grand Rapids. The medical school is in Grand Rapids. The Michigan State University campus is in East Lansing, an hour away. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was just last year, a year or two ago.
Yeah.
When there was a big campus shooting.
That's right.
And several students died.
Yeah.
And actually, Andy's best friend was at Michigan State at the time and had been in the building where one of the shootings took place 15 minutes before the shooting. So, it was very tough on us. But what's funny was or not funny, but interesting is that we get every alert like that.
Yeah.
When there's something suspicious. Yeah. Because I'm on faculty.
Right.
And
everywhere.
Now my daughter just started going there in the fall, and it just hit me as you said that. I was like, wow, those are going to be very different for me now.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Absolutely.
They always kind of got me.
Right.
But now they're going to be very different because now my daughter is there. So it's not just Andy's friends that are there, other kids that are there thinking about like that. Now it becomes more personal.
Wow. Yeah. And those are terrifying.
But I hadn't thought about it until, and then, obviously we hope and pray that we don't have another shooting at Michigan State. It was horrible.
Of course.
Really horrible. But, because it just brings it all up to the surface,
back.
Right?
Yeah. And then you're like, what can I do? How can I stop it?
Yeah. But you can't.
You can't.
I know. Because it just makes you feel so powerless.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's very sad.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad, though, that year did give you a little more peace. It was a more peaceful transition.
It was a much, much more peaceful transition. We didn't see my son a lot the first semester. We saw him a few times. But by the second semester, I think he felt comfortable and he had his space that he did often ask us to feed him. He's never put missed a meal. The kid loves to eat. So we were able to support hey, can we take you out to eat? Would you like to come over? I'll cook for you. And so we did see him a few extra times the second semester. And it was every time we saw him, it just made our day. It was just, those were such fabulous moments to have with him.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got to move him out of the dorm, in person and all that.
And did he move back home for the summer then, or what?
He moved back home for the summer. He worked here in the summer, and then this is now his sophomore year, and he went back. We helped him move in, and then we came home, and now we're back in Los Angeles, and he's there.
Yeah.
But it's a year later, and it's a whole, it's a whole other world. I think, it's not. Now I feel much more comfortable that he knows what's going on, and he knows how this college thing works. He knows how to drop a class, things like that. He knows where the cafeteria is,
And some of some people that he knows, right? You've
Absolutely.
probably
I bet
met
some of
some
the
friends.
students.
You've heard of some friends. All of those
Yeah.
things.
Yes, that
Too,
makes it.
because I think another part of it is that you worry about so much about their mental health, your surviving children. And
Absolutely.
I mean, it's constantly like, have you made any friends? Who are your friends?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Noah, tell me about Noah. You know,
Yeah.
all of these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Because you just want them to be, you know, have like a normal life, right? You want them to have that.
And I mean, mental health is such an issue in general for college students.
Yes.
You know, I'm always reading articles about it. So yeah, absolutely.
Especially these kids that have kind of lived through COVID and all that
Right.
stuff. I didn't do great things. I mean, if the ones that are in college now, you know, they lived through COVID in high school.
That's right. And they missed several years of, like, at least a whole full year of socializing.
Yes. For sure. Yeah, it's a challenge. There were some other things that you want to talk about, some other things that you've done. They're kind of, because you've got a website. First, I should mention your website, right?
So I have a website, but if actually the best way to see my story is to just Google, it's Elizabeth Koppel Channeling Grief on Substack. I have a Substack, which is like a blog. And I write, basically my audience and people I'm writing for are people like me, grieving parents. And I write about ways you can channel grief, what I've done, some of my struggles, and, you know, just writing about topics that I feel will be relevant. Like, you know, how much distraction is the right amount of distraction for yourself? You know, what are some things you can do to honor your child? You know, things as simple as, you know, if you're going to Starbucks to get a coffee, instead of giving them your name, give them your child's name.
Oh, I know. I just heard that one for the first time recently, that somebody did that. And it was the first time her daughter's name, she had heard her daughter's name in like 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was just because she told him that at Starbucks. What a great idea.
And it's like it's wonderful if somebody says Henry and I just feel warm inside.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So tips and things like that, and just a community, community for grieving parents. And that's what I've tried to do with my writing. Writing has been super therapeutic for me. And, when Henry first died, I was so worried I was going to forget stuff about him.
Yeah.
So worried that I was going to forget all the wonderful things he was. And so the writing has been helpful for me because I'm putting it all down, and hopefully, that will keep every part of his experience alive. And also it's helped me work through my grief. The other thing I've done is Henry was an election worker in the 2020 presidential election. It was the first job he had. And he worked like 3 days straight. It was in an old firehouse, and he loved it. He used to always say, "Mom, stop complaining about politics. Get off your butt and do something." And I'd just say, "I'm too old. It's your job. It's young generation." After she died, I signed up to be an election worker and actually worked the 2022 midterm elections in Los Angeles. And it was something I would never have done before Henry died. And I know he would be so proud of me. It was just, I went to the 5 different polling places and I audited them and checked to make sure they're doing things right. And I learned a lot about the democratic process. It made me feel really good about, our election process, but also I know if, Henry's watching from somewhere, he is like, "I can't believe you did that, Mom. Wow."
And didn't it feel like something that you kind of did with Henry?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
It was sort of like when you were there with him, because that was like a Henry thing. So I'm going to do that.
Absolutely.
Like Henry can't do it, so I can't. Yes.
It was no one in my family had ever been an election worker before Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really beautiful.
I mean, I love that.
And I'm doing it again this November. So so that's something special that I've also done that I feel has enriched my life.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, like I said, it's just taking a little bit of Henry with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like when I do the podcast right here in Andy's room. You can see.
Oh, it's Andy's room. Oh, wow.
Andy's bed is right behind me. This is all Andy's stuff. Andy's favorite Hawkeye hat that he wore. I mean, when I do the podcast in Andy's room, I feel like he's doing it with me.
That's so beautiful.
And when I can
great.
have something that I'm still doing with him.
Yeah.
I mean, what a privilege that is.
Yes, absolutely.
And for you, It's working on an election.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I mean, yeah, it's so hard. He's not here. And I think he's here somewhere, but it's just, I wish I knew for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel his presence, and I just have to send him love wherever he is.
Are there other times that you feel him?
Yeah, I do. He loved the backyard, and I go into the backyard sometimes, and I'll sit on the grass. And I donated his corneas when he died.
Yeah.
They sent me a wind chime. The group sent me a wind chime, so I hung it in the backyard, and I'll sit next to the wind chime. That I feel like I'm close to Henry then when I do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And anytime I'm in the house, I feel like he's here. I feel like he's here in the house. He loved this house, he loved his family. He loved our dog. I feel like he's here in the house. So those are two. I don't know. Do you feel like Andy more when you're in the house, or?
Where I feel it is when we're up at the cottage. He loved it there. Loved it. So I feel him there a lot. And then I'm with you with the wind chime. When I hear the wind chime going, I oftentimes will get a little smile because I think it's Andy singing to me.
That's so nice.
I love to sing, and I feel like it's just Andy singing to his mama. It was not too long ago. I was doing an episode with Gwen, and we were up north, and I had to do it outside. And we were talking about something, and all of a sudden the wind chime's going off, and then the wind chime never went off, and again, and I thought, it was Andy being like, that's right, Mom, that like agreeing to something that was being said, and then it quieted down. So I love it.
I love that
when I hear the chime.
I love that
because I just It's just the way he can sing now. And when I see a cardinal, oh my word, when I see a cardinal, I think of Andy every time.
That's when you see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like Henry's so ADHD that he can't focus enough to send me a sign. And so sometimes I'll say like, Henry, could you just focus for a second, honey, and just send me a sign? I think he's too busy.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
I'm just having too much fun, Mom. I just cannot take time to do that.
And he's having too much fun.
Well, good. Other things that you wanted to make sure we talked about today and touched on?
One of the things I wanted to make sure people knew was that Henry was really affectionate. He was incredibly affectionate. He always gave me a hug before he went to sleep. Like, when he was a high school senior, he wanted a hug before he went to sleep. And it was just the most wonderful thing. And I mean, as long as your kid is willing to give you a hug, take the hug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Take the hug. And the other thing I would say is, he had his own moral compass, and it really made me proud of him. If he thought it was the right thing to do, he would just do it, even if, it wasn't such a good idea. Like, so he was looking for a summer job, and he passed out resumes in our neighborhood, and then he got COVID. So, he literally just walked in to the store and given them his resume, he insisted on calling every store and restaurant he'd given a resume to tell them he had COVID. So, of course, I said, honey, maybe you don't really need to tell them that, it's going to hurt your chance of getting a job. Probably, you didn't give them COVID, just hand it. No, Mom, I have to tell them. So he called all of the places, and some of the people, when he told them, they're like, didn't you just drop off our resume? But like, that was important to him, and it was the right thing to do. I mean, thinking back, like, that was the right thing to do. He was doing the right thing, and I was trying to like lead him astray because, I just wanted him to get, have an easier time. And so he had started to search all over.
Yeah.
But like, that's just who he was, he knew what was right. And,
and he knew that's what he was supposed to do. He's a rule follower that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That really made me proud of him. That's something that, sometimes your kids teach you something. And that was definitely one example of that.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, I so enjoyed hearing about Henry and learning about Henry today. What an amazing kid. And, I just think you do a great job of showing us that it's important to just kind of make your own path
Absolutely.
in your recovery and your healing process, and not let other people tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Just do what you need to do, knowing that it's all okay.
I love that. I totally agree with you. And I think that's a great message to send to grieving parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.